In this video, we'll look at some camera navigation to get the cameras positioned properly. We've got two cameras in, a free camera and a target camera in the scene. Right now I'm in the free camera, called Shot 002. Camera navigation follows most other viewport navigation with a couple of minor twists. Because we're in a camera, we have camera-specific tools that apply to it. To start though, to pan a camera, click the mouse wheel in and pan this camera over. Let's take this first camera and we'll do a detail shot of the seating in the sunlight. I'll pan over, and then down in the lower right on the screen I've got my camera tools, and there's dolly. A dolly is a forward and backward movement of the camera on the z-axis. For example, looking down the arms of the seating and framing the shot. Also in a camera, we have things like roll. A roll is a rotation around the z-axis of the camera. To roll a camera tilts that view. This is the classic horror movie technique, for example, called a Dutch tilt, letting us know that something bad is going to happen. Notice also that this is snapping. It's snapping every 5 degrees because I have my angle snap on up at the top. With angle snap off, that roll is much smoother. Underneath roll then is orbit. An orbit works just like any other view. It does a nodal pan. Nodal is spelled N-O-D-A-L. And what that means is it pans around a node in the scene, usually the camera's target. Doing a nodal pan and holding shift constrains that motion to whatever the main direction of the pan started out as. So I'll do a nodal pan, for example, to line up this shot, looking down the arms of that seating. Underneath the nodal pan is a pan. And this, as opposed to an orbit, is simply a pan of the camera around. It's staying in place and looking somewhere else. We have a truck tool, and what this does is move this camera side to side or up and down in the scene, but again not forward and backward. We're moving on the Y and X axes here to position it. There's different ways to move that camera, and all of them are useful depending on how you need your shot to be set up. For example, I'll pan this over, and I'll use the truck tool, and then switch over to the dolly to pull in a little bit so I get a good close focus on one of those arms. Then I'll switch over to the orbit tool. Start it and hold shift so I'm orbiting horizontally. Switch back to truck by clicking that mouse wheel in and lining up that arm of the seating right here so we see it in close detail while we look down at the map. Those are our camera tools. They're much like any other tools here we've got. The exceptions then are how we manipulate camera-specific things. There's one more tool, and that's a field of view. It's the cube here next to dolly, labeled perspective. What this does is lets us change the field of view in that camera. As you can see here, as I scroll this forward and backward, the lens size is changing and the room is getting bigger. Depending on how we like the scene to frame and how big the space needs to feel, we can adjust the field of view using the perspective tool fairly interactively, or we can choose a lens as I did in previous videos. It's really up to you how you'd like to manipulate it. You can animate all of these. For example, a classic technique from Hitchcock is a zolly, where the camera dollies forward and the field of view opens up. The two of them together are very disconcerting, and it's a large cue that something is going to happen, with dramatic emphasis. So keep these in mind. We'll get our field of view set and use our tools to frame that camera, making sure that our initial place in the shot is where we want it to be, and that the camera is saying what we want viewers to see by where it's positioned.